Now, yesterday was the hottest day of the year, and you certainly felt that here in London. This month, a review commissioned by the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, warned that the capital is underprepared for what it called the disastrous consequences of climate change, adding that there is a lethal risk from severe flooding and extreme heat. Well, in the historical centre of the city, the Square Mile, the City of London Corporation has pledged to invest £68 million into measures designed to address some of the challenges. Alison Gowman is an alderman, one of the elected stewards for the city's local authority, and she took me to one of the green spaces that form part of the plan.
Well, here we are at the Noble Street Gardens, right next to Plaistress Hall in the City of London, and it's completely adjacent and overshadowed really by the Roman wall, which was built upon, so it's got the medieval bits on top and then the Victorian elements and warehouses on top of that. But in the shadow of that is this lovely area of green, which has been now left to go wild. And the wall is a great place for crevices, for pollinators to nest in, and the wild green biodiversity means that there's a huge and wonderful habitat.
How does this fit into the bigger picture then?
The whole of the City of London, which is just 1 square mile, has nearly 200 of these small little park areas, some of them very, very historic, others are ones that are being created new, and they really make the whole city such a livable green space to be in.
When it comes to climate resilience and plans to be more resilient with our changing climate, how important are these green spaces?
Well, they're so important because they actually create the right environment. They absorb water because we know there's more excessive rainfall coming now. But the biodiversity also means that the whole environment remains resistant because we know that the heat will actually deplete our biodiversity, and that leads to things like more pests and diseases. Now I want to take you down into the garden now.
Oh, please do.
If we go down this way, it is quite tricky underfoot, but at the very end is the Roman fort. I don't know whether you wanted to go down there.
Sounds great.
We've come down into the garden now, and we're right at the south end, and there is at the end here a square footings of a Roman fort. This was the Roman wall, this was the edge of the city leading to Aldersgate. And because it's been left largely to grow wild, although it is managed, you can see it's grown up with a huge amount of flora and fauna. But it's great because the wall also provides cracks and crevices for bees and spiders to nest in, as well as birds as well.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, how are you keeping tabs of the impact all of this is having on the climate?
We are doing audits of these garden areas on a regular basis to see whether or not the number of pollinators here this year, or the number of birds, or the species of the variety of the flora has changed. So we're keeping tabs on that.
A biodiversity index, if you like.
A biodiversity index, yes.
Fantastic. Well, we are standing out in the heat at the moment. We've probably stood out long enough. One question that's been raised is the speed with which the city is spending the money it has pledged to tackle climate change. 68 million pledged, but only a fifth of that spent so far. Why?
Well, actually, it's not how much we've got to spend, it's actually what the impact is. And the impact so far has been that we're absolutely on target to reduce our carbon emissions. So why spend money that we don't yet need to spend? We will be ramping up the spending as the period goes on. We've pledged that until 2027.
And what are you doing then to try and mitigate those emissions? Are you looking at retrofitting, for example? What sort of issues are you looking at?
The immediate work up until 2027 is really making sure that all our buildings are both resilient but also have reduced their emissions as far as they can. So that does include quite basic things, but very good things like LED lighting.
Yeah, lighting's one thing. I think people walking around the city see all the lights on, and that's a big question. Why on earth are they still allowed to be on?
Well, they're allowed to be on because I suppose in one sense that's how life is, but we do have a lighting charter that the City of London has introduced, and it's a voluntary charter. We are asking businesses to make sure that they do, most of them have the capability to be able to turn off lights when they're not using those particular floors or offices.
In terms of confidence about meeting net zero targets, how confident are you?
I'm confident that we're on track for the corporation's own 2027 target at the moment. I think to take the wider picture, that's a very bold move to say that the UK or London or the world is on track. I think we know from all the data that we're a long way off being on track, but I think we've just got to keep going on in the right direction.
And that was Alison Gowman, Alderman Alison Gowman, one of the elected stewards for the City of London's local